Hello everybody, before we jump into this course, I just want to warn you that this is going to be a very elementary course. This is going to be a lead up into building out full-scale applications like this, as I am building out a whole course. So if this is a little too elementary for you, I do have other courses that are more advanced in regards to connecting to the Binance API, building out a graph like this, or other graphs, which will be released later on. But the point of this warning is we're basically just going to be talking about the fundamentals to data frames. So if you already know how to use data frames, check out some of my more advanced stuff. If not, welcome. This is going to be taking a non-programmer into learning every aspect of becoming a data science guru that is able to work within financial data. So this is going to be very fundamental, basic stuff, but if you don't have a lot of experience within working in Python and data frames, I recommend watching this whole video and the next ones that I will be releasing later on. But with that, let's just jump into it and enjoy. So this is going to be the fundamental building block that we are going to be using to build out everything else within these courses that I am going to be uploading. So to get started, we have our IED that we're going to be building this project within. There are many IEDs out there. I would definitely look up which one works best for you. The two that I would recommend, I personally love PyCharm. It is a IED that you have to pay for, though there are other solutions out there like Visual Studio Code, which is made by Microsoft, which is another very popular, very good IED that you can use. But for this one, I am going to be using PyCharm because I can connect Jupyter Notebook to it, and it does a really good job of showing you, as I'm coding, what is going on within the data as I am building it out. So to get started, I do have a little bit of code already laid out for us that we are going to be diving into to basically understand the fundamentals to Pandas, data frames, and series. So to get started, the first thing we need to do is we need to import this library into our project. This is a straightforward process, and you're going to be doing this a lot when building out projects. So with that, we're going to get started. We're going to jump into our terminal, and as the first thing that you want to make sure that you are that you have done is that you are connected to the virtual environment of your project. I would definitely look up a tutorial prior to this on how to set up a virtual environment. It's relatively straightforward. I particularly like PyCharm because it is really dumbed down to as easy as possible. So all you do is you just create a new project. For me, if you're following this in PyCharm, and then you name your project, so I'm just going to name it whatever, because I'm not going to actually make it. But then whenever you go down to interpreters, you have different options. So I would definitely recommend virtual env or pip env. Both are really strong virtual environments that you can use, and they both do basically the same thing. But basically when you're installing packages or libraries, they aren't installed on your computer. They're installed within the project itself. And you know that you're connected to it is if you go into your terminal. My terminal on here, it's located at the bottom. So as you can see, I have it with a parentheses around it and then the project name. So that means that I'm connected to the virtual environment. So that is how I can actually install packages. So the first package that we really want to install is going to be pip install. And then we want to bring in Pandas, and this is what we're going to be using throughout this course. As you can see, I already have it installed, so it is going to be really simple for me to follow along and do this. So as soon as it is installed, we can just jump into it and we can get started. So the first thing that we want to do is we're going to be studying how to set up series. So series are used to basically work within data and to format it into a data frame. So what we're going to be taking within this is this pre-made data, which I've already outlined for you. So what I have here is we have two lists, right? A list is basically spread out, and as you can see, we have different things labeled within this list. We have an A, B, C, and D. So that is going to be called labels, which is going to be referring to this list right here. The next thing that we have is we have another list that is made up of data. And data is going to be made up of strings, which are 25, 50, 75, and 100. And then the next thing that we're going to be working on is data correlated. Data correlated is a little bit different because we are calling on a label, which is going to be A, which is referring to 100. B is referring to 200, C is referring to 300, D is referring to 400, right? So we're going to be looking on how to combine these different lists into one data frame. We're also going to be looking at how to do some of the basic multiplication, addition, and other fundamental things that we're going to be needing to be working within these different lists, right? So, like I said, this is going to be very, very basic. So, just to get started, the first thing that I want to also point out is whenever we're importing pandas, we're naming it PD. So, this is just a typical thing that most programmers do to save time, but what we're going to be doing is we're going to do PD, and then we're going to call on series, and what we're going to be doing within the series is we're going to be bringing in two lists, right? So the first list that we're going to be bringing in is going to be data. Then the next thing that we want to bring in is an index, and we want to basically reference this index as the labels. So that's simple enough, but what we're going to be doing here is if we run this, we can see that we get back a data frame. And as we can see, that this looks a lot better formatted than this particular list. We aren't really working within that much data, so it's really easy to see. But whenever you're working within financial data, you can assume that there's going to be a ton of data that you're going to need to be pulling on. And whenever you have it labeled like this, it makes it really easy to work within. So what we have here is we have it formatted where we have our label, and then it's referencing a number, right? And then we have a data type of object, which is interesting, right? So this data type is basically saying, what is this information, right? So this is just an object, right? This data type can also be a float or a string or an int or anything of that sort. So we're going to be pulling on another data frame, and we're going to be building out another data frame series. And for this one, we want to bring in data correlated. So this is going to be referring to this right up above, and what we want to basically make the index is we're going to be calling on labels again. So let's see what happens here, right? So if I run this, we're going to see that we have the exact same information, but something has changed, where if we look at the data type, we have an int of 64. So this is the difference, is whenever we are pulling on data, we are calling this as a string of a number, right? So this makes it the object type that we see right here, where for this, whenever we're calling on these numbers, we aren't adding the string variable to it. So they are represented as ints, right? So for this, we are going to be applying math to Pandas series and data frames, as you can see right here. All right, so now what are we going to do in this next segment? The next thing that we're going to be working on is we're going to be working on math within pandas and data frames. How can we take this number and multiply it by this number, right? So at first, you might think that we can name these as two variables, right? So what I have done here is we've taken this code right here, which is the exact same thing as this code, which I've already worked with, and which takes this list and this one, and it combines them together. And all we are doing is we're naming it series 1, okay? The next thing that we've done is we've done the exact same thing, but we're working within this. So we're taking this, and then we're taking this label, we're combining it together, and we're calling it series 2. So if we add these two series together, it should be pretty straightforward, where we are adding 100 to 25, 50 to 200, because that's what we're seeing up here, right? So whenever we're looking at what I'm looking at right now is going to be this information, where we have all the indexes are the same. All we're trying to do is add these two rows together. So if I were to run series 1 plus series 2, it should do that, right? But it doesn't. We get an error. And if we look within the error, we can see unfunction. Add did not contain a loop with signature matching types D type and D type. So that is basically referencing the D types, which I've already kind of hinted at the beginning of this video, where we were looking at the different D types and we could see that they're different. So whenever we're working within data frames, we cannot add two different data types. They have to be of the same data type to basically do any functions within them. So how do we change the data type? Right? And this is going to be used a lot, and I've already used it in some of my other videos, but you're going to find this used all the time. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our first series, right? Because this is a series which has a data type of objects. We can't do anything with objects. We can't add objects, but with ints, you can easily add ints together. So let's change objects to an int. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to call on series 1, right? So we'll call series 1, and then we're going to do a Astype, and this is used a lot, and what we want to turn this into is an int. So now, if we do plus series 2, which is taking the second series, and we run this, we can see what we get. Well, bam. So now what we have done in this one little sentence is we have taken series 1, we have changed it into an int type, D type, and we have added it with series 2. And it's as straightforward as that. So let's do another breakdown, and we can kind of see what happens here. So we'll do the exact same thing where we're going to do series 1, and we want to do an Astype, and we're going to do a float, and then we're going to want to add it to series 2. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens here. So as you can see, it also works. So you can work within an int and turn it into a float, as we have done here. And what it has done, as you can see, is it added a 0.0, which signifies that it is a float. And we can also look at the D type to see that is a float 64. So this is relatively some of the basics to working within data. So the next thing which I want to do is we're going to jump back, and we're going to go into turning these into something different. So let's jump back down, and we're going to go into series 1, okay? And I want to add this with series 2, and for series 2, we're going to do an Astype of string. So what do you think is going to happen, right? I'm going to go back up real quick, and we're going to look at this, right? So we have 25, 50, 75, 100, and this is an object type. That's what series 1 is referring to right now. The next thing that we have is 100, 200, 300, and 400, and we're turning this int into a string. So what is going to happen whenever we add this and this together? So if I run this right here, we can see what we get. And as you can see, it adds it onto it. So we're getting 25,100 instead of 25 plus 100. And that is how strings work. Now this is really interesting whenever you're working with, for example, I want to add an S to make this object plural, right? If you're working within objects, that is easy to do. Or as I have used in prior videos, if I wanted to basically take an asset, so for example, we'll talk about Litecoin, right? Litecoin's symbol is LTC, but in order to fetch data, I need to turn LTC into LTC BTC. So we can create a loop, and within this loop, we add the string of BTC on top of all of the different assets. And I've done this in future videos. We will be addressing this topic in particular. So as you can see, this is the fundamentals to changing the different types within data frames. And we are going to be building on top of this as these videos continue. But like I said, this is a very elementary video in reference to Pandas series and how to turn lists into a data frame and how to also change the type of these different data frames.